Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Successful Supply Acquisition, Ways to Optimize this Critical and Often Underappreciated Task. I am Laura Dierda with Becker's Hospital Review. We will begin today's webinar with a presentation and we'll have time at the end of the hour for a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into the Q&A box you see on your screen. We are looking forward to hearing your questions. Following the webinar, we will have a short survey to fill out that will pop up at the conclusion of the webinar. Thank you in advance for your participation. Today's session is being recorded and will be available after the event. You can use the same link you used to log into today's webinar to access the recording. At this time, it is now my pleasure to start today's webinar by introducing our presenter, Paula Starner, LPN. Paula has a strong background aligned to the diverse atmosphere of surgery centers. She has been an LPN for over 25 years, with over 20 of them being in the operating room as a scrub tech or surgical assistant. In addition to her clinical roles, Paula currently assists in purchasing and endo procedures for a multi-specialty facility in the Midwest. At this time, I am pleased to turn over the floor to Paula to begin today's presentation.
Thank you, Laura. First, I'd like to just give you a background of how I got into this purchasing, where I was to begin with. As you said, I was a nurse that worked in surgery as an assistant or circulator, scrub, etc. I had absolutely no purchasing background, nor did I want any purchasing background. So I kind of got the position by default. There was a person who was leaving, who had had the job since the surgery center had opened. No one really realized how much she did. Did it all on her own, so we didn't have an active participation in it. So she decides that she gets a job somewhere else. Our nurse manager is going to take over the position, and then I'm going to be her assistant and ordering the supplies. Well, that lasted maybe 2 weeks, and then I realized the baby's mine. So I work for a freestanding surgery center, so I have absolutely no any connections to hospitals, which can be a very, very stressful time because if you need supplies, where are you going to go? No, but you don't have this relationship. The doctors own the facility. There is no other entities. We are multi-specialty, so everybody's wanting a piece of the pie from the doctors. They're all fighting over the same toy, you know that type of stuff. So with that being said, as the first slide, we see the successful acquisition and optimize this critical and often unappreciated task. It is one of the most unappreciated tasks out there, I believe. People don't realize until they don't have a supply what you even do. They don't even know you exist. But you'll have everyone and their brother coming to you when something's not working right, or oh gosh, we ran out of something. Not that anybody took the last supply and you're supposed to just know that, but it's you. You never hear anything good. So I took it as no news is good news. With that, let's go to the next one here. So through this, I'd kind of like to see how I learned to balance and optimize supply tasks, best practices around supply acquisition, and making the most of our supplier's relationship. First of all, I'd like to go into how I choose a vendor. When I took over the position, I just kept having doors closed, different vendors. They'd say, get online, get onto our online catalog. That's how the last person did it. I would go to get into the account, and, I don't know the account setup because I don't know the last lady's mother's maiden name. Well, can I get an account of my own? She's no longer here. No, you'll need to call her and get her mother's maiden name so we can get you that. Well, I started figuring out, how much time I'm spending on this. I want a vendor that I can trust, can be honest with me, and also responsiveness. When I need you, are you there? Honesty. If you don't know something, tell me that, And if I have a problem that I really feel is something that needs to be looked at, I give them that, fix it. And if you don't fix it, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look elsewhere. So understanding the need. There's increased demand at the centers, and it also means an increase in the work. As you know, surgery centers are on the rise of doing all kinds of procedures, major procedures, a lot bigger than what it ever used to be. But the problem with that is, with all the increased demands and all the increased work, oh, look here, the reimbursement is not changing. If anything, it's going down. Right now, total joints, it's a nice moneymaker for us at the present, but once they decrease that, what they're going to reimburse, well, that's going to go down too then. So therefore, we've always got to be planning ahead of what is out there for us to be able to save money. Cost for a patient, it starts right from the minute they're put on your schedule. So staffing and supplies, they go together because, as it says, majority of centers utilize 20 to 40% of revenue in staffing and supplies. I don't think people realize that, yes, the cost when it comes to with the staffing is when the patient is actually put on your physical schedule. Right there and then, we're starting the cost. Those costs, we can't really do much with the staffing. We try to, but we just try to provide them with items that are efficient, so then the efficiency of the staff is keeping within the supplies. Important task in the supply chain, as you can see, is, as we all know, cost. Cost is definitely a driver. Quality, yes, you want more bang for your buck, but is this item worthwhile? Tell me, as the vendor, tell me why you would recommend this and what makes it so much better than the other. And efficiency, how can I present this to my people and, be an efficient way? How are we going to cut time but not lose any of the quality and yet still have a great patient outcome? Okay, let's start with cost. That was the first of the pie. It's more than price. Cost can be, like I said, it starts from where the patient comes to your first put on your calendar, your schedule. And with that being said, it's definitely a driving force, but the goal is to provide high-quality, cost-effective health care. So, like I said, cost is just not from the supplies end. It's from admission to discharge. You want to lower the cost without hurting the quality. So you've got to look at ways to cut down cost. There's tax, there's different items, there's different ways, with your cost. What does it cost? Basically, ask your vendor, where are we looking at cost-wise? Is it something that is even within our ball field that we can use? And then look at your contracts. You have a contracts team. You also have a GPO. That GPO is responsible basically for helping you get the best contracts out there, and they're constantly reevaluating it for you. And with that, like I said, you get the better contracts. And then constantly evaluate. Evaluate, is that product doing what they told you it was going to do? And evaluate it. Is there anything new on the market? And that's where you rely on your vendors. Your vendors are constantly, going to other facilities, this and that, seeing what they're using, and rely on them. I have a strong relationship with a certain amount of vendors, and I do. I rely on them to come to me and say, hey, there's this product. It's doing this, it's doing that. I think your surgeons would be interested in it. Evaluate what's out there. And then inventory reduction. As we all know, a surgery center is not a storage unit. We don't have the capabilities. So anything you can do to reduce your amount of inventory is amazing, because then you have room to be able to provide a safety stock, say in your storeroom or whatever. You're constantly wanting to see what can we do, what can we consolidate to make inventory reduced. And then, like I said, there's resources. Use them. Please, 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 if I can get anything across to you, use your resources. The GPO that I have has a contracts team that I send off all of my contracts to, and then it allows us to, hey, did you know that this is very binding here, and this is saying you have to do this, this, and that, and it's legally binding once you sign it, and that's going to be a 3-year contract. Well, we don't know that as coming from a nursing aspect or whatever. You would hope that your administrator would work closely with you on this, and then the two of you would develop, okay, is this what we're going to do or not, being this. But you take it to the company then that gave you the contract and said, hey, I had a contract team. They read this, and they told us that, this here is saying that, we have to purchase 3,605 of these, and if we don't, and then they're like, they take it back and say, it was just a misunderstanding, But at least you had some kind of proper person, trained person to go over that. And then you've got these ones that the local vendor costing. That you see a lot in ortho. Ortho, God love them. The vendor won't give you pricing as based off your GPO, and with your GPO's pricing, you can at least reference back and say, hey, this is what I'm supposed to get being charged. With the local vendor, it's pretty much, it's this guy here, to get him to use us, we'll do X amount or whatever. Well, that's not really fair, because number one, you should be able to have it in writing and say, hey, this is what we're getting. They can change it at any time. And with that, though, with the GPOs, you want to do your utilization, and you want to utilize the contracts that you do have. And by doing that, when you do ordering, it's a whole process. You got to check cost. You keep your order, the PO that you've assigned, and then from there, sorry about that. God love it. And then you want to also pair that with the sheets when you get them, your packaging slips. Keep that, and then when the final invoice comes in, you want to check to make sure a pricing on all things are meeting, and then you want to go back to your GPO and make sure that you are getting the accurate price. So by that, utilizing the resources of your cost. And then there's always quality, the quality of the item. Like I said before, I rely on the vendor to tell me why is your item so much better than this product, and I want to know. How many recalls have you had on it? Is it something that rips easily, or any kind of bad outcomes that they've had with this device? And I want to see data. How it's helped out. What is done to increase efficiency, and I want to see those things, and I want you to show that to me. And in the process of that as well, I want you to be able to explain to the staff, this is why we recommend this. And then, as we all know, we all have these quality indicators here that you've got to report. And there's just different ones you can go with your supplies. Now, if you get a new supply and the quality is lacking, you believe, you should always have an incident report or something like that turned back into you. So therefore, you can say, okay, your product here is, quality that you're saying. This is what's happened. We've had to use 3 applicators to get one staple on, and then you got to look too. But the staff, is it actually a quality of the item, or is it just staff usability? And like I said, with the vendor assistants, they're there for the product education, and you want them to be able to speak with the staff. And then on the other hand, if you go with this product, are they going to be there during the case when the doctor is yelling that he doesn't remember how to use it? and be there to support him and the staff until they feel confident and competent to use it on their own. I also like to use my vendors for referrals for different benchmarking. Where else is somebody else using this? I want to call them and see how they feel about it. Quality is even the packaging. How is it? Size-wise, how am I going to store this? How's it come? Is it provided in a case of 250 and I'm only using one a month? What kind of expiration date time do we have? And what happens, if we aren't going to use it? If it's a 6 months out, can I sell it back? Those are things that I need to look at. And then you want to involve the right people, and I mean the clinical ones, because you always have those ones that you just know aren't going to like anything that you've tried. They've been doing it for 50 years. They don't like change. They don't care if you're going to save money. They've just made up their mind. And so you want to involve the right people, because the doctors, especially in the surgery side of it, rely on the staff to build the product up. Do you like this, or why do you like it, or they're relying. But if you give them the least bit that, oh God, this thing, I have no idea, I don't like it, well, you put out forms, and each person evaluates the form, or the product on this form. So everyone's included. You just know that you're going to have the negative ones, and that's fine. But then at the end of this form, you also go ahead and they sign, and that's accepting accountability. So therefore, when they're in the room telling the doctor, because they forget how to use it, that they've had no idea, oh my gosh, why they got this new stuff, no idea, and what are they supposed to do? They don't know how to use it. Well, then you kind of pull up the form and say, you know what, you did. Because the doctor is going to come back to the purchasing and say, you know what, you've got new stuff out here. Why is the staff not trained? Well, they are. Because as purchasing, you work very closely with your nurse manager as well, and get staff education put out before you ever put a new device out into the actual field where it could hurt or harm someone. Efficiency. Efficiency is a big thing in a surgery center. Like I said, it starts as soon as they come in the facility till they leave. We run on efficiency. We can't lollygag around because we're not open 24/7. We have to work together as a team to accomplish the same thing, provide high-quality, cost-effective health care to a patient and make sure they have the best outcome they could. So you want to get your different team members involved, different stakeholders, that being doctors, administration, the clinical staff, anybody that's going to come in contact with this patient, get them on board with you. Set deadlines. And by deadlines, I mean I don't do the actual ordering. I would have people do ordering from each department. They bring me the order. I then purchase it. We have deadlines because we all know that we have to make it here, and there, because if we don't make it by 1 o'clock, oh my gosh, we're not going to get next day delivery, this and that. So that's kind of getting them active into the actual thing of purchasing. It makes them feel involved. I also have somebody that's always trained as well, that if I'm gone, knows how enough to pick up and carry on. Procedure packs are super for efficiency. Our patients, as soon as they arrive into the facility and start into the pre-op area, they start with a procedure pack. And that would be for an IV start kit. Everything that is needed for that patient, for that IV, minus the needle, is in that pack. It's wrapped up, you take it in bedside, you open it up, and it's there. You're not constantly pulling thousands of different things or people running to get this or get that. And that takes away from the patient time. And then with supplies, you want to locate the supplies by where they are used. You don't need people running all over trying to get a supply, leaving the patient to sit there to wait, which decreases your efficiency. There's no need for the storeroom to have housing all of this supply, because basically, like I said, you don't want a lot of inventory in the surgery center. And this is where the vendors play a role. They come in, they can tell you, this is how you can come up with this that would get a decrease in inventory. Like, for example, we went to CDS boxes. There's so many devices that we were keeping individually on the shelf from different vendors that we now have in this one box. And at any time you pick the box up, it takes you about 5 minutes to pull that case. But you're going to pull gloves. That's all you're going to do. And it frees up space for other stuff that you need. And another thing that I do to keep up with efficiency is anytime I'm going to be out of the office, on vacation or whatever, I do blank POs, and I do those also during the time that I am there. I put them in the room, and then when the patients come in to have that surgery, the circulator then puts a sticker on there, and then they'll put down the supplies that are used. Therefore, too, since I'm not in the room and I don't know, you'll have the doctor who doesn't know how to use something and he's used 3 different ones. Well, then the rep will speak up and say, oh, I think that's a device problem. We won't charge you for that. Well, it's funny how that never makes it to billing on their end. So here comes the charge, and we've got 3 different meniscus repair kits when the doctor only used actually one because it was going to be written off. Well, then you got to follow up with that. You've got to call them, get with your rep, see what's happening. So therefore, when it's on this PO, it's coming back to me, and they can mark on there any kind of notes they want. I'm then able to go ahead and proceed on with making the official PO, and then billing will be aware of any changes that are on there as well. Plus, then you're not behind at the end of the month when they call and say, yes, I hope you don't mind, but we need POs for the last 12 cases. And I found that, since with the Affordable Health Care Act, I noticed that purchasing managers kind of went from box movers, that's what people would call us, and actual supply hitlers, because all we would ever do would be to tell people, no, you can't have that. I went to automation. There's stuff out there that allows you to free up some of your time to focus on this other. And by doing that, with the automation, you can do your POs, you can do, any kind of vendor relations stuff. And it frees up so much more time for you to focus on different supplies, contracts, this and that. I do all of my ordering through a automation system. You put it all in, and then it actually generates the POs, which is wonderful. You're not doing that, calling each individual person, coming up with each individual PO, and it gets to be a nightmare. Plus, it also lets you know when you place the order, if it's going to be on back order, so you know to move on, try to find something else. That's been a really big asset to the purchasing department. Patient safety, what we do. The critical and a must. Now, when we look at this, there's a form that we use for the evaluation process, like I said, of our different supplies, of if people like them, and like I said, right people to help. Those are the same people that I have doing the ordering to us. I work very closely with them. They also help to tell me what do they want to see in the packs. And at the same time, you're always evaluating. If you're not using an item in a pack, then tell me. We'll get rid of that item. But you've got to keep that communication open. So I meet with those people on a regular basis to say, hey, this is what we're at. We're not using this, but now we have 50 of them because before anybody's gotten to tell me this, we've just taken it out and putting it in the shelf. Well, that's not very helpful, and it's not cost effective. And vendor references. I like vendor references. I like for them to reference me, people that are using it, or even a way to get online and educate myself so I can actually be the person that's out selling this to the doctors. Because like I said, once the Affordable Care Act came in place, purchasing managers have now really came more into more strategic planning, part of the team decision making, with trying to work with the team to come out with the best outcome for the best price. So ideas for improving supply acquisition. Here's some really food for thought. Vendors provide inaccurate information to physicians. Make sure you keep an open dialogue with the vendors. Educate vendors about reimbursement differences, HOPDs versus surgery centers, and have physicians understand costing impact. Okay. Well, the surgeons that I work with, and this is especially in ortho, they will see they use the same company at the hospital, so the rep will be there talking, running his mouth, about how good his product is and how he could, benefit the surgery center by doing this, and that. And, well, we do not carry the same contracts as the hospital does. Of course, the hospital is going to have better buying powers. I mean, they're generating more money in more ways than just surgery alone. You've got, your inpatients and all that kind of stuff. And so they're telling the doctors, oh, well, if you use this, you can increase your reimbursement by such and such. And it's like, no, when they come to me, no, I'm really sorry, but that's not in a surgery center environment. They're giving you for hospital. And that's really, really hard for them to understand because all they heard was the cost. And boy, that's looking good. And physicians are not understanding the impact of their individual requests. You want them to understand the impact, and physicians are very, very competitive. Your best thing would be is to, put out a random every now and again, like ortho, you can use. You don't have to do individual doctors, but let them know what their cases are costing. Let them know, what you could benchmark, what these other doctors, using the same stuff somewhere are using and the costing. You constantly want to keep them in a competitive mode where they want to do what's best. And by doing that, they don't want somebody outdoing them, their other fellows. And also, you want them to assist in the contract reviews. Because if their items are going up, I know I had a problem with suture. I lost an Ethicon contract because of my last GPO. They decided to no longer carry Ethicon. So I had to go to the doctor and say that, what you were originally paying $360 for 36 is now going up to $792. Is there something we could use to get us through? There is, something that is very much comparable to it. Would you mind using that until we can get this? And they're very receptive to it if you explain to them. If you just go in there and say, nope, sorry, this is what you're going to have to use, well, then you might as well just, pay the $792 because they're going to find all kinds of stuff wrong with it. So a lot of it is physician understanding. And then once they buy into it, then it's a little easier. So what you want to do here is ordering lots of single sterile items even though we have a pack. Well, that's a problem. The reason you go to custom packs, like I said before, is so you can consolidate and not have to carry individual items and take up space. Saving unused items from a pack, yes, things come in as a piggyback, and you can use them. But if we realize that we're always saving these items, then you have an overstock of that, and when will it be used? So therefore, it needs to be brought to the attention that, these need to be removed out of the pack for the pack to be cost effective. And then you always want to review, like I said, and also, go into where they're actually being used. Follow it through, see. Where can we improve here? Is the packaging something that you want to see different? I know in our endo department, they don't like the way their buttons come in packages. It takes up too much time for them to open them, which is true, and that decreases efficiency. So you want to look into that and see if there's some other ways, talk to the company, and if not, well, you're still just going to have to go with it, unfortunately. Not optimal, but doable. And you want competitive relationships with other clinical facilities in your care. Like I said, we were like a divorced couple from the hospital and us, because a group of the surgeons at the hospital are the ones that developed our surgery center. So when I first went into purchasing, like I said, I'm in a rural area, and if I don't have a supply, that's about, cancellation of a case, you lose money. So I developed a bunch of nice relationships with a couple area hospitals. I also would vent to them a lot of times too when you're having trouble finding supplies. It was a nice way to be able to just talk to somebody that knew or knows what you're going through. And with developing these relationships, it would be very nice if I ran out of a supply. I would then call them and say, hey, do you have this? Now, I'm probably not going to be able to afford to give you that particular item back, and I can't probably pay you for that either. I'm not going to, because your contract is different than my contract. So you tell me what you would pay for this item, and then I will give you something in return that I pay that equals that. So therefore, I'm not knowing any of your stuff. You're not really knowing any of mine. There's no money exchange. It's just equality of products, not the same product. Works amazing when you're in a bind, because then once you build a relationship, they're then calling you and you're saying, okay, yes, I can help you. I'd kind of like to, just before we end with get the questions and stuff, I would kind of like to elaborate a little bit on cost, quality, and efficiency. I have some examples. Like a doctor wanted a couple of very expensive devices to do an anterior total hip repair, which is a very nice reimbursement for us. But if you looked at the cost of it, it was like, whoa, I mean, this is really costly. Then you look at the quality of it, and meanwhile, the doctor is very good about, telling you why they want this. He wanted this self-retaining retractor and another device that was a retractor holding thing. And so upon looking at it, I realized, cost of this, first of all, it's making him more comfortable. That's what he's used to using. For the patient was amazing. He didn't have skin damage because of improper placement of retractors, because it's the self-retainer skin retractor. It decreased the patient's overall surgical time, so therefore it decreased the amount of anesthesia. And with him, it got the visualization that he needed, and it decreased his actual surgical time, which then allowed for us to add more cases on that day. So you're winning by him with the right product, costing a little more, but in the long run, you're making up for that because you could add more on, plus less surgical time for patient, which is amazing, less chance for post-op infection because the wound's not wide open for so long, and tissue is not damaged. Skin tissue is not damaged because of improper placement. So there's an idea of, like, with cost, that's just an example of, cost is something there, but look at the benefits that it does have. And another thing with cost is, okay, this item costs this, but we go ahead and we get this cheaper one because there was really no difference. Well, then you realize upon using it that you have to open 3 or 4 of them. Is that really cost effective? No, it's not. So would you rather just go with the one more expensive item? And yes, because when you show the proof that you've had to open 3 of the cheaper ones, well, that's not cost savings at all. With that being said, I'll turn it back over to Laura. I have really nothing further to discuss. Thank you all.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. And thank you, Paula, for your presentation. We really appreciate your expertise. Now we will begin today's question and answer session. Please feel free to submit any questions you have by typing them into the Q&A box you see on your dashboard. We will try to get through as many questions as we have time for. And we do already have a few questions for you, Paula. So first off, just a question of clarification. Could you please answer for one of our attendees? They asked what an HOPD stands for.
Well, that's just a health organization. It's usually a healthcare facility. That's how we look at it. I can give you a specific. Let me. One moment, please.
Absolutely. I think, we definitely appreciate your thoughts there. Oh, yep.
Yeah, it's when an ASC is converted to an HOPD. I'm not really. That's a hospital reimbursement type thing.
Okay, excellent. And
the hospital reimbursement perspective as opposed to an ASC. That makes sense?
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So it's looking more at the hospital structure than the standalone ASC structure.
Right, because
for
with
outpatient.
CMSA, they use the hospital market basket as their comparison and pricing.
Perfect.
And then you're going to get lower, of course.
Yes, and thank you for that clarification. All right, the next question we have here from an attendee wanting to know if you could provide some more examples of the automation processes.
The automation process that I use is Hybrant. There's plenty of them out there. Hybrant, it's when we converted to that, they go into your system. We use Advantix. They were able to hook up into our Advantix, pull our inventory over into their system. They're also able to do the POs for me. I submit my orders, and like I said, they go ahead and it goes off, and they disperse the POs to whoever. They do all of my ordering. Your preference cards can also be through there as well, which keeps your inventory based on the preference cards of what is used and what is not. There's also an app that you can use. So if somebody calls you somewhere because, they're out of something, you can get on your app and order. I highly, highly, highly recommend Hybrant. It was one of the best moves we've ever done.
Fantastic, and thank you so much for the insight. I think that's really helpful. We have another attendee here that's wondering, in addition to the products that are used by physicians, have you found any strategies for products that are used by nurses too, such as the peripheral catheters, IV sets, and IV fluids?
Well, with that, we have decreased the amount of supplies that we go through. Like I said, each person's getting one kit. Infection rates down. You're not dragging in this box with all this multiple stuff in it into each patient's room. And time has really improved. I don't know if that helps them too much or not, but I'm not quite sure if you could clarify that a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, your general insight there, I think, is definitely helpful in looking at the supplies that physicians use, including the implants and whatnot. And if there are any differences or anything differently that you use for the products by nurses too, looking at, especially as I mentioned, some of that supplies that go around IVs, IV fluids, that would be helpful. Otherwise, if it's pretty similar, then we can definitely move on to our next question.
Yeah, I'd say, there's no difference. When you use it towards the nursing staff to surgeons, you use the same strategies. You're wanting to sell it. And then the best thing is, too, you use it across the board. So what they're using in pre-op, tourniquet-wise, dressing-wise, whatever, we're using in the OR as well. So it's across the board. Everyone's using it. And that's the same thing with my custom packs. I have been able to get the surgeons to all use the same devices, same equipment. So that's how things are working out with the custom packs, because we've converted it to everyone's using the same.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that for us. The next question here is around the value analysis process that you described. And our attendee is wondering whether you have a value analysis representative or somebody on staff who's appointed to head up that initiative, or how really does that work?
We pretty much collaborate as a team. You have your nursing supervisor, your administrator, your vendor, myself. We sit down and we discuss, the item and the value of it, and what all it can do for us and what all it can do against us. Value-based.
Absolutely. So it's really a team effort,
right,
to make that happen. Got it.
Correct.
Perfect. That's great to understand.
The
next attendee question.
Really,
oh, yes. Yep.
You want the doctor to be a driving force in the value base too, because you want them to see, if the value of this product or the value of this or the value of that, to get them on the page with you to be more apt to use it.
I see. That's very helpful. The next attendee question is, do you have a suggestion for disposing of expired items?
Well, we donate all of ours to Camo. So therefore, third world countries getting use of it. I also think maybe you look into reprocessing. I know Medline, for example, has where you can send out items that have not been opened but are past expiration date, and they can redo them for you, and therefore you can get a second use out of them, or if you don't want them, at least put it into there. Well, you shouldn't have much outdated equipment in a surgery center or supplies. I mean, you got to keep those rotated. Like I said before, get with a company and say, hey, I got 6 months, on this. Will you buy it back, or will you trade me out for something with a farther out expiration date? And if they don't, well, then I'd look for a different company.
Absolutely, and thank you for that informative response there. I think that makes a lot of sense. The next attendee question that we have here presents a bit of a scenario. The question starts off with looking at potentially if a startup vendor came to you as the ASC leader and person who is looking at the supply chain closely. If the vendor came to you with the ability to become a one-stop shop for all biologics needs, including bone void fillers, stem cell products, etc., how likely would that be of interest to you? And besides the cost, is there anything else that would make you take notice and persuade you to go with that vendor, or what would really be your response?
Well, if a startup vendor came and the things that they're offering are biologics, bone void fillers, things like that, I'm going to want to see some results with that, infection rates, success stories, because cost is high on that, but a post-op infection on an item that we're not real familiar with because it's a pop-up vendor can kill you. So therefore, I want to see documentation. I want to see, any kind of data they have out there about their different stuff with sterility. If anybody's rejected it, if so, post-op infections, that kind of stuff. You have to look at the whole picture past the actual supply that you're going to be having there. And I know with the one company that I used for grafts, I actually went and toured the facility to see, how are these items prepared? I want to know. I want to be able to see. I want to be a resource person. But to just have somebody come in, and start wanting to use this stuff, no, I need to see the data.
I see. I think that's a great point, and thank you so much for spelling that out for us. The next question we have here is, do you establish a measurable value of the product, and how will you determine the value of each product provides?
Which one is it? Okay.
Oh.
Never mind, I'm on.
Yes. So,
Okay.
do you have any thoughts on, measuring the value of the products that you're purchasing?
As in cost, like inventory, or what are they wanting with that?
Yeah. So I think what we're looking for is, when you're looking at purchasing, whether it's the implants or other types of systems that you're bringing in. I know you especially mentioned orthopedics. When deciding which products to use and purchase, how do you determine the value? I know there's a cost component to that, of course, but then I'm sure working with physicians as well to figure out from a quality standpoint that you're making sure the quality is there for your patients as well. So I'm wondering, do you have any method for measuring that type of value, I guess, when you're looking at the cost as well as the quality component?
Well, it's going to go into a whole. You're going to basically look at the the value that you put on that as to what your outcome is. It's a value based, so therefore, like we would go with the whole pie. You're going to look at the cost, the quality, and see the value that you're getting out of it for your outcome for your patient. Because with like ortho, is there other stuff? Well, it's not been proven, so you can't measure that. You know what I'm saying? You can't measure that value. But otherwise, no. There's not really anything but the doctor and the results of showing, data that what's out there and what's been used and the success rates to figure out the value.
I see. Perfect. Well, moving on to the next question we have here, how do you make sure that your stock gets rotated, and do you do counts or do your people help?
When stocking the shelves with the new supplies, we always make sure you pull out and put your new stuff on the bottom so the old is on top. We go through on a regular basis when we do our monthly cleaning or whatever, we go through supplies at that time too to make sure if anything is going to be coming up in the next month, you then go ahead and put a mark on it so it highlights it. And I have a couple people that help me do counts, but I don't have a bunch of people putting time and effort into it because that's a loss. And when we do our counts, it used to be you counted every little thing. Now you know how it comes supplied to you, so you can kind of guesstimate. If you get a case of 12 and it looks like you've maybe only used a couple, then you guesstimate basically.
I see. Perfect. And then along those similar lines, our next attendee question here is, what are your thoughts about third-party vendors as a way of cost savings?
Yeah, third party, it depends, I guess. It would be hard to determine that. I don't care for third party vendors, say. I like to just keep it within the ones that I've had success with. I limit my amount of vendor that I use, and no, third-party vendors.
I see.
I use with what I've had success with, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that makes sense. All right, perfect. And then I do have another attendee question here. Is how do you work with difficult physicians?
I can be just as difficult as they can. Well, when you work with difficult surgeons, I've been right up at the table to work with them, so you don't even notice it. But what they want from you is they want you to be resourceful. And they want to be able to vent to me when they don't like a product. They want to know that I'm going to follow through and try to figure out what we can do, get with the company. I don't really have much of an issue with them as long as they develop a nice trust with you. The relationship that you build with them, you won't have that much conflict. Listen to them. Whether you actually get what they need or whatever, at least listen to them, give them the time, the respect, and follow through with whatever the problem could be.
I see. Perfect. That sounds like a great plan, and hopefully it will be helpful for our attendees. Another question rolling in here. Do you have pre-approved new manufacturer implants before the doctors use them? For example, this particular attendee says a podiatry vendor often brings new products for the podiatrist at the center to use, and then the attendee receives the sales order. But how do you manage that process if there are new products coming in from the manufacturer?
Oh, well, this is a real problem. I'm glad they asked. In a surgery center, I don't know how they all are, of course, but I know how ours is. We approve the case to be able to be done affordably in our case, in our area, in our hospital or surgery center, based upon their insurance. I know that's not right, but we'll work with them to try to get what we can. But, so there's nothing worse than getting this pre-approved. We're going to use, let's just say, Arthrex, for example. And I know that perhaps from the last 50 rotator cuff repairs, you get an average of $750 to $1,000 or whatever. Let's just say that's not right, but so that there's some insurances out there that is not going to pay for any implants, none. So you kind of have to look at that and think, okay, well, if we're going to pay $750 for implants, but yet we're getting this X amount for the case, okay, we're not losing. We'll do it. Well, then that's how that case is to go on. Well, then you've got your handy-dandy rep who comes in and decides that, oh, hey, doctor, I have something new that, it's going to improve your OR time, and he gives them a whole line of BS. And that implant that he has given him is now $2,650. Well, the case that you had approved, you were going off the $750. There's no difference, So I called the rep in and I said, look, I just want you to know that you have to come to me and provide this. You don't do it in the middle of a case. You show me prior to even offering it to a doctor, not the day of a case or anything else. And then we have to look at the cost, because then if that's a case that you're going to use that, then we can't do it here. So they have to get it pre-approved through purchasing. They can't just go in the room anymore, open up these devices. And I told them, there's a chance you're not going to get paid for this if this continues. I also took the doctor aside, too, and I explained the same thing. And all I had to say to him was $750, $2,650, and, yeah, he was on my page.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that and outlining that for us. It's really helpful. Another question we have here
You're not getting a better outcome with, they've been doing rotator cuff repairs for how long, and they're telling me, it's a big cuff tear. I've seen big cuff tears. I work the OR. Mm-hmm. And you never once had to use this $2,650 item. They said, well, you've had it on your shelf for 2 years. Well, it's consignment. I don't care what you do with it. You don't need to use it in my facility.
Right, absolutely. That's a great point. Our next question here is, does the ASC use a consultant for RFPs when selecting the GPO, and what are the most important factors as part of the GPO RFP?
Actually, I worked with my prime vendor when I was coming up with the GPO, knowing from what the better contracts are out there for ASCs. I then met with a couple different GPO leaders, and I had went with one GPO for the longest time, and then they decided not to really work for ASCs anymore because they're more into the hospitals that have or the ASCs that have an affiliation with hospitals, because you get more bang for your buck. So at that time, I constantly shop around for my GPOs between my administrator and myself. We get together and look what's out there, have them come in, give us a presentation, give us a feed out how much are you going to be able to save us, and an overall analysis of what we've been using with the other, and then we go from there to choose. So it's just basically the administrator and myself.
Oh, I see. That makes a lot of sense. We do have time for another 1 or 2 questions here, so feel free to type those into your question and answer box. The next question we have here is, what's the first thing someone who is a new materials manager should do?
Educate themselves. Educate, educate, educate. There's resources out there. Use them. You've got to get some kind of understanding, because what I've found within the administrator role, this and that, they're not real familiar with the supplies, the supply contracts, this and that. And I know with my facility, my surgeons pretty much went with whatever the administrator said. So they gave her like full reign. So therefore, I have to educate myself on what's best out there, product-wise, be able to present it to her, because then I'm going to present it to them and obviously, end up with the end result of whether we're going to purchase something or not. And don't beat yourself up, whatever you do. Not everything is your fault. Sometimes you'll think that, gosh, how do I even get up in the morning? So just educate yourself, and remember to don't take things personal. And if you don't hear anything from anybody in a day, then consider yourself, you did your job great.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And then we have time for this one more question that we have here. What is the value to you, what is the value to you to have a manufacturer who can supply across multiple product categories through your distributor partner?
That is amazing to me. It is so helpful, because it's like a one-stop shopping. Saves on a lot of time, plus you can keep it in your warehouse. It's very beneficial.
Great, that's fantastic insight there. Paula, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I guess too, it would think it'd be kind of nice if we're able to come up with your custom packs and this and that. Reduce your variations. I guess that's something I really wanted to get across to you. If this doctor is using this item and this doctor is using a different one, but they're both achieving the same goal, get them together and see, is there something that we can come up with? And even by doing that, I've done with what they've used at the hospital to try to keep it at our facility as well. And then it's not like they have to get into a different mode when they come there. So reduce your variations. That also, will reduce your inventory. That's about it.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation today, Paula, and thank you all as well for your time. Please remember to fill out the short survey that will pop up at the conclusion of this webinar. I want to thank Paula for her excellent presentation and Medline for sponsoring today's webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to having you join us for future webinars.